Good afternoon, everyone. There are two dimensions to this, which I think we're not differentiating here. One is intellect, another is intelligence. Intellect can only function when there is an accumulated memory. Why a child in the village looks a little dumb compared to a city slick boy is simply because he has more memory and information. But if you leave them in real-life situations, the rural boy may come out much smarter, where a certain intelligence is needed, where information is not needed. So essentially, human intellect functions from memory, and everything that we are considering or labeling as technology is essentially memory-based. Our imagination is memory-based. Memory means recorded past, something that we already know. How we can extrapolate into a different format. Essentially the same thing, finding expressions in permutations and combinations, but nothing new happening. Nothing new can happen from that. It looks new because it's a new presentation. It's a new format. Well, in terms of day-to-day life, it's absolutely new, of course. So technologically, whatever we do will lead us to a space where right now human societies have invested heavily. This I must blame it on the European default, because pre-Renaissance, when these societies were hugely restricted by dogmatic religious belief systems, when a few people broke through, that is, they decided to think for themselves, they refused to go by the book or the clergy, and they wanted to think for themselves, and when they thought for themselves, the amount of freedom that it gave them, they thought this is liberation. Because of this, from worshipping God to worshipping human thought became the mode. Since then, we call this scientific development. But essentially, human beings have started worshipping their own thought. What I think is more important than my very existence. Because of this, every capability that we get, we have been using it against ourselves and every other life, simply because our thought is again a manifestation of the memory that we carry. If you allow me a few minutes, we, in the Eastern cultures, in yogic culture, we look at human mind as 16 parts. These 16 parts can be categorized as 4 basic segments. It's called buddhi, I'm using the Indian terminology, I'll come to English. Buddhi, ahankara, manas and chitta. What this means is, buddhi means the intellect. Intellect, if we have to use an analogy, it is a knife. All of you, I'm sure, you would prefer to have a sharp intellect rather than a dull one. Yes? Hello? You must choose, I'm going to bless you. Sharp intellect or a dull one? Sharp. So essentially, it is a cutting instrument. So we have a knife in our hand which gave us a certain access to knowledge because we could dissect whatever we want. This is the nature of human intellect. Whatever it is given to it, it will dissect and look at it. Everything is dissected, including human nature. But by dissection, you will know certain things. If I dissect you, I will know where your heart is located, where your liver, kidney and spleen is located and what's its condition. But I will not know you by any sense. When I say you, I am not talking about your thoughts, your emotions, your ideologies, that also can be known by dissection. We call this psychoanalysis, that's also dissection. But you will not know the nature of this life by dissection. There is no way to know that. So you're using a knife to stitch. You will leave life in tatters. So knife is useful for cutting. So this knife of intellect is a powerful instrument of survival, not an instrument to know something that is beyond your present level of perception. By dissection, you know certain things, but it is not beyond your present dimension of perception. Because this knife is useless without the bank of memory that you already have. What connects you to this bank of memory, which we call as manas, which is a silo of memory, is a dimension called ahankara, which literally means identity. This is where misuse of technology is happening because of our identities. The moment you identify yourself with something, your intellect will ceaselessly work towards protecting that identity, either with our species or with our gender or with our nationality or race, religion, caste, creed, 1,000 other ways. Whatever is the nature of your identity, that is how your intellect will function. That is one care we have not taken in our education systems, in raising of our children. What is the identity? Because we need small identities to fight other people. We have been engaged with this forever. Anyway, leaving that aside, the manas is a silo of memory. This one thing I will subdivide for your understanding. We identify 8 different types of memories in the manas. This is called elemental memory, atomic memory, evolutionary memory, karmic memory, articulate memory, inarticulate memory, and conscious and unconscious levels of memory. When I say memory, we are not thinking about just what's in your head. Right now, there is more memory in every DNA that you carry or every cell in your body than your entire brain can carry. Because you may not remember how 10 generations ago your great-great-great-grandfather looked like, but his nose is sitting on your face right now. Your body remembers. Your body remembers 1,000,000 years ago how your forefathers looked, even the skin tone, it is not forgotten. So the amount of memory that the body carries is phenomenal. Memory is not just that dimension of memory that you can consciously access. There is memory. Memory is the thing which decides who you are right now. It is from this context you're talking about robots becoming just like you because you understand, after all, if you build substantial memory, they'll just become like you and me. Those of you who are thinking of a robotic partner in your life, a robotic wife or husband, it's a good idea because all the time the complaint in this relationship is your partner is not the way you want them to be. So you can manufacture them the way you want. You want them mild when you want them mild, you want them wild when you want them wild, you want them to be turned off when you want them to be turned off. This is a great idea. Yes and it may become a reality. If not very soon, in some time, Mr. Kaku is more qualified to make the prediction as to when So, essentially, anything that you can build from memory can be built. Anything that can be built by storage of memory and access to memory and analysis of this memory and expression of this memory, everything that you're doing through your intellect and thinking that is you, can be done by a machine at some point. I'm not the expert to predict when, but definitely it can be done, there's no question about that. But there's another dimension of intelligence within the human being, which we refer to as chitta. What chitta means is, this is a dimension of intelligence where there is not an iota of memory, it is unsullied by memory. What this means is, see, memory is what has made you everything that you are. You have a human form, this is evolutionary memory. You have variety of other memories, that's what makes you a certain kind of person, and so many other things that you are. Your professions, your capabilities, your knowledge, everything is because of memory. But memory is also a defining boundary. The moment you identify with your memory, you say, oh, this is my friend, this one I do not know, this is a person I like, this is a person I don't like, this is all memory. Memory fixes a definition and a defined boundary to your life. What is me and what is you is just a question of memory, that I know this is me and this is you. But there is a dimension of intelligence which we call as chitta, or in modern terminology, loosely, it can be called as consciousness. Not being conscious as you and me are, this is wakefulness, this is not consciousness. So, this dimension of intelligence has no memory in it. Where there is no memory, there are no boundaries to it. You will not do that with a robot. Do what you want. Because everything that can be done by memory will be done. Right now, 90% or more of humanity lives by their intellect and their physiological and intellectual capabilities. These things can be built at some point and make them look very real. So, once machines start doing this, it is inevitable for you to explore the deeper dimensions of who you are. Right now, this has happened in a significant way. In, let's say, 100 years ago, if we want to be strong, if we want to be successful, we thought the best thing was to build, maybe 500 years ago, let us say, if you want to be a big man in the place, in your town, you had to have big muscles. Whoever had the big muscles was the big man, strong man there. But now if you have big muscles, we will give you a menial job. We don't recognize you. One reason why women have a equal space or reasonably equal space on the planet today is because of technology, because the power of the muscle has been neutralized. How much brain power do you have, how much intellectual power you have is deciding things right now. But if intellectual power is again, as muscle power was taken by the machines, if intellectual power is taken by the machines, naturally human beings will dig deeper into their consciousness. A machine cannot dig deeper, but everything that you can do, a machine can do in future, and that'll be a great day because that means we are on a holiday. We don't work for a living. Now we look at life in a completely different way, which will be very, very significant. In fact, for the first time, we will become human beings. We must understand why we are called human beings. That means we are the only creatures on the planet who know how to be. As you were saying, a bug knows how to survive better than you. Without a social atmosphere, many of you will not know how to survive. A bug knows how to survive far better than you, better equipped than you, because he's just focused on his survival. But a bug will not know how to be conscious. You can definitely build a bug. It's very interesting that today in the computer technologies we are using these words, that's a bug, it's a virus. Definitely. The dangers of this are also there. as the dangers of machines are there even today. For example, the automobiles are killing more people than wars every year after year, they're killing. But we have accepted that as collateral damage, it's part of the thing. We're traveling faster, so some people will die. We have come to terms with that. So similarly, maybe we'll have nano-soldiers, soldiers won't be human beings going and fighting. We sit here and let loose on other people. At one phase it will happen. These things will be terrible, but even now it's terrible. You can just press a switch here and destroy a whole city somewhere else. It is quite terrible even now. So, before such capabilities come, or as they're coming, there is no such thing as before and after. As these capabilities are coming, we must also strive to upgrade the human being to move beyond the limitations of their intellect and come to a deeper dimension of intelligence, which is life itself.
Как?
The very source of life itself within us.
Как, гуру, как? Потому что показывают…
How can this be done? As practice shows, and we're talking about technologies of the future, no technology, no technological breakthroughs, no technological evolution is changing human nature. Latest iPhones will never change the fact that people, have been killing each other over a piece of land. They're still doing the same. They're killing each other over a piece of land. How can we ensure that? How can we resolve this issue? Because technological improvements are not improving human beings. Maybe because the memory, ancestral memory is so strong in us that we still remember how our ancestors were fighting over a piece of bread. Maybe we'll continue doing the same because of the memory we have.
Say, the thing is, if anything needs to happen, a certain amount of human energy, time and resource has to be dedicated to it. For example, somebody was telling me, in 1860, when certain survey was done in United States, some kind of observation, probably studying dead bodies and stuff like that, the skeletal systems and things, they said in 1860, nearly 60% of the people would start losing their teeth at the age of 40. And in 1860, nearly 97% of United States was illiterate. But today, people have their teeth intact even if they're 90. And today, 100% is literate. How does this happen? Simply because we invested in what is called as schoolrooms and teachers and toothbrushes and mothers. We invested. If we did not invest, even today we would be losing our teeth, even today we would be illiterate. So, we have to invest in consciousness. Till now, we've been investing only in our survival. But once the technologies that they're talking about starts becoming a reality, which is already becoming, survival will not even be an issue. When survival is not an issue, we will definitely start investing, but the sooner we invest, with less aberration, we can move into these new possibilities. As Dr. Kaku said, it's always a double-edged sword. Which way are you going to use it depends on who you are, isn't it? So whether your identity and your experience is very exclusive or your identity and experience is very inclusive, this will determine which shape and in which way the sword will swing.
Спасибо большое. У нас есть время, что…
Thank you so much. We still have some time left for the questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Members of the audience? No questions from the audience? No, there is one.
For your really fruitful visions shared with us. My name is Konstantin Sonkin. I'm CEO of a startup and a researcher in the field of neuroscience. And my question is to Michio. Dr. Kaku, please, you shared with us your long-term vision about neurocommunication and brain-computer interfaces. But may I ask you about like short-term goals for us, for developers, what to develop first of all to contribute to daily life of a large population of consumers to increase the level of life of humanity. Thank you.
You ask a question, what are short-term goals in terms of brain-computer interface? Well, first of all, in the United States, the driving force behind this technology is the Pentagon. The Pentagon has given $150 million to create exoskeletons to bypass the injured spinal cord of soldiers wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq, so that the human brain directly communicates with an artificial hand, an artificial leg, and can walk. And if you saw the World Cup soccer games 2 years ago in Sao Paulo, Brazil, the man who kicked the football, initiating the Sao Paulo games, was totally paralyzed. He was a quadriplegic. He could not walk. But at Duke University in North Carolina, they put a chip in his brain to hook him up to an exoskeleton, and he kicked the football. So the immediate gains is for people who are injured in football accidents, car accidents, injuries of the spinal cord, injuries in warfare, to create an artificial body controlled directly by the human brain. Now, my colleague Stephen Hawking, the physicist who died recently, lost control of his fingers and vocal cords, but he could still communicate. And how? Because his brain communicated with a chip, a radio in his glasses. That chip picked up radio from his brain, converted it to electricity to a laptop computer, and Stephen was able to think and write. So by thinking, he was able to write books and communicate with the outside world. So here's an immediate benefit for people who are paralyzed, their spinal cord is no longer functioning, they are disconnected from the world, and this will also make possible a brain chip for Alzheimer's patients, because we can now upload simple memories in mice and also in monkeys. Simple memories can now be put on the internet. This means that we want to create a brain pacemaker for Alzheimer's patients so that memories can come flooding into their brain. And the Pentagon, again, recently gave $50 million to create a memory chip for soldiers, but also for Alzheimer's patients. And so here we have an immediate market for people who are afflicted with injuries, spinal cord injuries, as well as the aging process, to allow them to bypass the spinal cord, to access memories that they've lost. And here is a market for companies that can utilize this to make money, to create products to alleviate human suffering.
Пожалуйста.
Thank you so much. I have a question to Sadhguru. I'm very much interested in your point of view. Do you think a man can change his destiny in this life by taking certain steps, or do you think all his steps, whatever he does in his life, are related to other lives that would follow and his transformations? In other words, can a person, or should a person, try to change his destiny now, or his destiny is preset, and whatever he does in this life will only affect his future lives?
What generally people are calling as destiny is what they largely create unconsciously. Whatever we do unconsciously, we can also do it consciously. If you can move your hand unconsciously, you can also move it consciously. So similarly, if you're creating your life unconsciously, you can also create it consciously. if you create something consciously, of course, you would make it the way you want it. So, destiny means a largely unconscious accumulations taking shape and taking their own tendencies and leading you on. You can make a conscious destiny. When you fail to make a conscious destiny, then generally it gets referred to as fate, fixed destiny. But is your destiny fixed? Definitely not. Otherwise, why all this effort? If everything is fixed, why you and me should live? We could die at our birth and just fine, isn't it? It's definitely in your hands. Whether you take it into your hands or not is always the question, it's an individual question.
Abdul, entrepreneur, I have a question to distinguish Sadhguru. My question is as follows. When you said that we need to invest in as much into consciousness as much as in technology so that consciousness becomes an island where humanity can preserve itself in the light of the development of robots, that's an island where we can still feel like human beings. So my question is, today there are lots of infrastructures to invest into technologies. There are startups, there are investment funds, numerous scientists that are developing different solutions. How can we address the issue of investing into consciousness or self-consciousness? What needs to be done? What infrastructure is there in place? What solutions are there to do that? Thank you.
I would like to correct the question a little bit before I address the question. You used the analogy of an island. No, I want you to understand, human intellect is an island. All products of human intellect are small islands, including technology. Consciousness is the ocean in which we are existing. What consciousness means is an intelligence not identified with any memory, that means not identified with any boundary of you and me and this and that. See, you must understand this. On this planet, let's think of planet, but even the planet can be thought further. In this space, suddenly systems have happened, stars have happened, planets have happened. In that planet, life has happened. All of it fundamentally from an intelligence beyond this material that you're seeing as creation. All of it emerging from almost nothingness. It is in a way nothingness, but you must understand the word nothing by putting a hyphen between no and thing. It's not a thing because it is not a memory block. A memory block is a thing because it comes with a boundary. Once there is a defined boundary, it becomes physical existence. This is a dimension of intelligence which has no boundaries. So that is the ocean. You're mistaking the island for an ocean and an ocean for an island. So what do we have to do for it to manifest in human society is large scale. In every generation of people, there have been very conscious beings, but in some generations and in some societies, they have been heard. In other societies, they have been ignored. The other noise has been much bigger. So it is time we make that voice which refers to a dimensionless, a boundaryless consciousness heard. And methodologies as to how to become conscious, as there are technologies to create well-being in our surroundings, there is a science and technology to do the same within us. So, this is not today's thing, this has always been there, it's as old as humanity. But in some generations it is heard loudly, in some generations it sinks, and accordingly human well-being rises and sinks. Any amount of technology, if you don't know how to be, you still are not well. See, look at our own state right now. As a generation of people, we know more comfort and convenience than any generation ever knew in the history of humanity. Our life is far more comfortable. No generation ever knew these kind of comforts and conveniences. But can you claim you are the most joyful and fantastic generation ever? No. People are becoming neurotic. I am not saying we're worse than other generations, but we are not significantly better for the amount of toll we have taken on every other life to have what we want to have. So, your technologies will bring comfort and convenience, will not bring well-being. It's time to focus on that, because already we are at a place where technology is going through the ceiling, we are not matching up. It is like, right now, your well-being is still determined by what's around you, not what's within you. So this doesn't mean love thy neighbor, be like this, go be a good person, be a noble person, this is not about that. Your body and your brain should take instructions from you. If your body and your brain take instructions from you, would you keep yourself healthy and blissful every moment of your life? I'm asking you. If you had a choice, definitely you would. So obviously your body and your brain is not taking instructions from you. This means you're not conscious enough. So we have to invest in that direction. One thing is, if you walk through this city, I'm sure there are hospitals, there are schools, there are toilets and there is everything. But do you have a place where there is a place for people to meditate? There's no such thing. Eastern societies invested heavily in the past in that direction, but today they are also emulating the West and trying to compete with them, losing out on this. But the need for inner well-being will become very strong in the next 20-25 years when technology starts doing most of the things that you're doing and you don't know why you exist. Then the need for well-being becomes super strong. So, if we want to be ready for that day, it's very important that we invest both physical infrastructure and human infrastructure, which focuses on the innermost core of who we are.
Позвольте, я задам последний вопрос, адресован вам, господин Каку. Я очень…
Mr. Kakum, let me ask you a question. For quite a while, I used to think that technological and communication progress leads to a total solitude of a human. Yes, people can connect via FaceTime, but they become more and more isolated from each other and inward focused. Somebody has mentioned those dolls, and fantasy about what to do with those dolls. But the problem is that people may no longer need each other when the technology is developed. Will it happen? What do you think?
100 years ago, when the telephone was first coming in, there were many articles denouncing the telephone. The telephone, they said, was impersonal. We will spend too much time talking to this mechanical voice in the air rather than talking to our children and talking to our loved ones. And so they said the telephone is evil. Well, the critics were right. We spend too much time on the telephone, we don't talk to our children enough, but the telephone, we love it. We love the telephone because it expanded our horizon from 20 people to 2,000 people. And now mothers come up to me and say their children spend too much time on the internet. What should they do? Well, personally, I think that a new etiquette is being created for children. If you are a child and you're not on the internet, then you don't exist. A new social etiquette is being created. So I tell mothers that it's a good thing if their child is on the internet, otherwise they'll be an outcast, but they have to be socialized. And that's the key to the whole puzzle. We want to make sure that our people are socialized, that they interact with real people in real time, make friends, make alliances, and engage in social discourse so that they can function on several levels. On one level, they can function in cyberspace because a new social etiquette is being created. And on the other hand, they can interact with people socially in terms of understanding pecking order, etiquette, politeness, deference to our elders, how to make friends, how to make coalitions. All these things are very complicated, and we have to make sure that our children understand that as well. And so the internet does not have to be an isolated island divorced from the rest of society. If anything, it'll expand your horizon from 2,000 people to 2 billion people. And so I think that we have to make sure that our children are socialized and take advantage of the internet, because the internet, as I mentioned before, promotes democracy. And as I concluded before, democracies rarely war against other democracies. So when your child plays video games with somebody from Norway, Mexico, or Afghanistan, that is a good thing. Because in the future, they may not want to war with people from these other countries because they are their best friends. So what I'm trying to say is a new social etiquette is being created. We have to make sure that we don't hide in it, but on the other hand, we have to use it because that's where jobs, opportunity, and new friends are going to be created.
Спасибо большое.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
I think this fear about technology is just fear about the unknown for most human beings. Everything that is new, that comes in, of course, there will be a certain challenge of exerting ourselves to understand what it is. It will definitely not create solitude. The problem should be more of, there will be no room for solitude. That will be the question because we'll be too much connected. People wake up in the morning and the first thing they see is their cell phone. What are the messages they have? It's fine, because the gadget is new. I think the next generation will learn how to handle the cell phone far better than the way we are handling it because there's a new gadget, we're a little excited about it. I'm sure people will come to terms with this.
Спасибо. Последний вопрос из зала, пожалуйста.
Okay, last question from the floor. A very simple question I want to ask both Kako-san and Sadhguru. We are now in a situation of unprecedented uncertainty. The God has rolled the dice. And we know that the memories which we have discussed, that electricity generates waves and makes the heart beat. And when the heart no longer beats, the person is dead. And memory is also an archive of memories, experiences. So what should we do? Forget everything, because the system is glitching. So we'd have to reboot it. Can I ask you for a very short answer, please?
You mentioned that we have constant uncertainty, but I personally think that's a good thing. It's a good thing because new jobs, new exciting occupations, new challenges for humanity is being created. Now, I'm generally an optimist. Why? Because I think the smallest unit of history is the decade. Anything smaller than a decade, you get random noise. And therefore, when we look at the random noise, it looks frightening. Every day, a new emergency, a new crisis. But when you look at history decade by decade, then you begin to realize the enormous progress. And that came through to me every time I talked to my parents and my grandparents. Think of the world that our grandparents lived in, where high-speed travel was getting stuck in the mud when it rained, long-distance communication was yelling out the window, And a good long life meant that you lived to be 45 years of age. That's the way it was for our grandparents. So I tend to be optimistic when you look at decade by decade, you realize that all the uncertainties you talk about are fluctuations within the decade.
Дмитрий, добавьте, что вы хотели от себя добавить.
Dmitry, would you like to add anything? One, you know, the dice have been rolled, but whether to forget or to remember everything, well, it's difficult to say. Sadhguru, a very short answer, please. Your last comment.
We are complaining about too many possibilities. You must understand, in the past, uncertainty meant whether you live tomorrow or not. Today, your life is largely assured. Uncertainty is only in terms of possibilities and new happenings. You must celebrate this, not worry about it. Because in the past it was always about war, it's about punishment, somebody's going to hang you, somebody's going to kill you. It's no more like that. There is a proper process for all those things. By accident, nobody can simply kill you or hang you or do things to you. Now it is only about possibilities. Uncertainty of possibilities is a fantastic situation. We shouldn't even ever complain about it